So when I say the state of Minnesota is the GOAT, there's a reason why. Now, you may think it's because of Tim Walz, who, by the way, I am a fan, but I'm actually a bigger fan of the lieutenant governor of the state of Minnesota, and that's Peggy Flanagan. Many of you know who she is, but for those of you that want to know her better, this is a great opportunity. I count Peggy as a part of a group of people that I really have a lot of respect for, that are really making a difference. A lot of people just talk the talk, but they don't actually deliver. But this is definitely something that Lieutenant Governor Flanagan has been focusing on in terms of delivering for the people. So, Peggy, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining me on the Katie Fang News Channel.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So, Peggy, and I'm going to take the liberty of calling you Peggy instead of Lieutenant Governor. I first want to kind of let people know, because it's funny how we always lean into, well, what do people look like? Like, oh, you look like you're Asian, Katie Fang. Okay, great. So somebody might look at you and say, oh, I didn't know that Peggy Flanagan is a member of the White Earth Nation, and specifically the Ojibwe tribe. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, Ojibwe. Yep.
Ojibwe.
Yeah.
So this has always been something that's been fascinating for me, because I love the idea that people may have assumptions made about somebody based upon face value, but then they actually don't really know, which I think speaks about us taking the time to really get to know the people in our community. So kind of share briefly your background.
Sure, absolutely. So I am an Ojibwe woman named Peggy Flanagan, right? So, which may come as a surprise to some folks. But listen, I come from tough people on both sides of my family. My great grandmother, Katie Cooper, she came over on the boat when she was 15 years old after both of her parents had died, with 5 of her siblings, and started a life here in Minnesota. On my dad's side, where I come from, the Ojibwe side, frankly, I shouldn't even be here. Our folks have been erased, and people have literally been trying to erase and exterminate us for years and years and years, for generations. And the fact that I am still here, I exist, my daughter is here, I think is really testament to that resiliency. There is resiliency in my bones, from my grandmother on the Irish side to, my dad's side. And I carry that in me. And there's, a lot of Native folks in this country who might not sort of fit, right, like the stereotype that people have of Native people, oftentimes because they keep us stuck in the past instead of as contemporary people, like teachers and lawyers and doctors and, lieutenant governors and candidates for U.S. Senate, all of these pieces, right? We're still here. We've always been here, and will remain here into the future.
So, when I hear this from you, Peggy, I'm just really struck, because you talk about the resiliency of you, your family, your people. And then you see and you juxtapose that idea with the white Christian nationalist movement, this type of energy that's being pushed and peddled by Donald Trump. And he's looking for the wholesale removal of anyone who doesn't look like him, the Black and the brown people. He doesn't even want them here in the United States anymore. You've broken so many barriers by being the, quote, first Native American woman, fill in the blank, right? And when you make it to the United States Senate in Washington, D.C., you'll be the first Native American woman to serve in the U.S. Senate. So how does it make you feel, though, to know that part of the battle is literally just having to justify your existence for who you are, not for what you stand for, not for what you've done, but literally for who you are?
So I'd say this. I am battle tested. I am small but mighty, and I think that this is a moment for us to lean in even harder. I think when we talk about this country, and we talk about the change that needs to happen in Washington, certainly I am a Native woman. And, I think having one Native woman in the United States Senate is the floor. But I'll also be really clear that I'm not running to make history. I am running to improve people's lives. And I think having a diversity of experience actually makes government work better. I'm also someone who grew up on Medicaid. Medicaid was my healthcare. I am alive today as a kid who had severe asthma There were some times that I was in the hospital more than I was out in elementary school. It saved my life. SNAP, or back in the day, what we called food stamps, kept food on the table, right, for my family. And I just think that there aren't enough people in Washington who grew up the way that I did, who have that experience, who are literally making life or death decisions on behalf of people they are not in relationship with, and don't understand, so many folks in this country who are struggling to make ends meet. So I think it's not just a diversity of my, my background from the sense of being Native or being Ojibwe. It's also just that lived experience that I think is so critical. I don't know how many people who serve in the United States Senate have been on Medicaid, but I'm guessing it's not a very high number. And as Donald Trump is talking about, Christian nationalism, I also am someone who goes to church every Sunday, right? We don't miss, because for me, my faith is deeply personal and also part of why I do this work in the first place, right? Like Matthew 25 and caring for the least of these and making sure that people have what they need to survive, but also to just live good lives. Like that is something that's deeply important to me. And I know to countless Americans who feel like their faith has been completely co-opted by Donald Trump and this administration and his billionaire besties, frankly.
So accepting some people, I have recently been telling viewers that we can't count on DC to save us. And that's not something that's to denigrate the work that's being done. I just think that there's a little bit of a false hope that gets placed in the idea that the people that are in DC are going to be the ones that are going to turn the corner for all of us. But I've seen, right, the federal government is like a big ship. It's like turning the Titanic, right? It's very hard to do. And when I looked even deeper into your background, and I saw that your first foray into politics was running for the school board. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
And I tell people that we have to lean into our local and our state politics, because most, if not all, of your politics will be local. We are obviously impacted on our lives by what gets decided in DC. But when I see somebody like you, who's clearly on a trajectory which is deserved and well earned, and the fact that you started at the school board level, do you also share the sentiment that more people should be throwing their hat into the ring to do things on a local and a state level? And why? Why is that so important? Because you're now looking to take your talents and your kind of recipes for success nationally.
Well, I think that's exactly right. So local politics, the smaller, the more, directly it impacts your life. What happens in your child's classroom is deeply, deeply personal.
Yes.
I ran for the school board as a 24-year-old who didn't have kids in school. And it happened because I was spending a lot of time trying to recruit folks from the community to run. And one day we were at this event in the Minneapolis American Indian Center talking about education. And Franny Fairbanks, who ran that center for a long time, who's kind of the OG of our community, who was incredible. She said, "My girl, why don't you do it?" And I was like, "Well, that's not what I meant." Right? I was like, she said, "But you're always around here during election time and telling people how important it is. And you've been doing this work in the community. Why not you?" And it truly was, well, why not me? There are so many folks who have really important lived experience that we could benefit from. And, it's not a secret that you have to ask women multiple times to run for office.
Yes, that's true.
Right. So I think, consider this for your viewers, for those women out there, consider that like, this is your ask, please run, because we need more folks. And when people are able to be in relationship with the people who are making decisions at that local level, I think that also helps to build trust in government. It can be accessible. And, you really can see, I think, the fruit of your labor as you're doing this work. And so, I think folks on the other side of the aisle, Republicans, have been doing this for a very long time. They have figured out, right, that if we run folks for school board, for, city council, for soil and water, and eventually, right, they are going to ascend into Congress, right, into the White House. This has been a strategy for a long time, and we have to build that bench. And I'd actually argue that lieutenant governors themselves, Democratic lieutenant governors, are also that bench. We are the most diverse group of elected officials in the country with deep roots in our communities. And we are the folks who are now running for those offices like governor, like Congress, like Senate. And so many of us have come from those smaller offices. And that really matters. So if people are feeling frustrated by what they see happening in DC, as many people do, right? Like, show up at your local city council, show up at your local school board meeting, and see what you can do there. Because all we have to do in this moment is just try to do the next good thing. And if you can do that locally, that can also make a huge difference.
But you and I have spoken on panels together where it's just, I've been struck in my heart with just sadness about how even if you wanted to vote, you can't. The indigenous people in the United States, the tribal lands are often plagued with voter suppression. It is not unique to just one particular community of color. But when it comes to indigenous votes, those are severely restricted for reasons that are just so arbitrary and capricious, right? The idea that you don't have a, quote, physical address, so because of that, you cannot register to vote, or the idea that to vote in person is such, it's laborious. It's miles to be able to do it when you live on a reservation, for example, or in some tribal lands. Talk about whether or not we are doing a bad job, especially in the media, for example, of not focusing on issues like that. Are we having the blinders on when we're focusing maybe on only certain communities when it comes to issues like voter suppression?
Well, I think one, Katie, I'm so glad that you asked this question and that you are always willing to talk about these issues that impact the Native community, or frankly, just communities that too often are just overlooked. Because, our communities are located all across the country, and oftentimes in states where the Native vote can make a difference. So it's not on accident, right? Like that it is harder for our folks to vote, that as you said, that, what kind of ID counts, or that you have to drive sometimes over 100 miles to fill out a form or to cast your ballot. Throwing these obstacles up to make it more difficult for Indigenous people to vote, like that's on purpose. But also, sometimes, quite frankly, people don't even know that we still exist.
Yes.
And
yes.
so, and then, like what I was talking about earlier, the fact that so often we are kept as relics of history, or the imagery that people see of us as, as folks who are stuck in the past. What that allows is for policy that deeply impacts the lives of Native people, or, frankly, the investments that are made or not made in healthcare, education, infrastructure. If you're able to dehumanize people, if you're able to overlook them, then you don't actually have to be held accountable for those policy decisions or those investments that need to be made. And so I think that is, these are deeply connected. There's organizations like the Native American Rights Fund, or NARF, that are doing incredible work to make sure that Native folks have access to the ballot box, that our votes are counted, but it is consistently a battle. And when anyone is restricted from their right to vote, we're in trouble, and our democracy absolutely suffers. So this is ongoing work. But I think with the visibility of more Native people, when we're able to talk about, our tribal IDs, how we register to vote, those addresses, where we live, how we live, I think those are all things that can make a difference, and that we should lift up examples of where, this is going well. States that do allow tribal IDs for voter registration or to cast a ballot, places where we're expanding opportunity and having polling places within reservation communities or within rural communities. We're expanding the right to vote. Instead of throwing up those obstacles, we should celebrate that too, because it's really important. And I'm grateful that you're shining a light on our access to the ballot box, because it's not just about voting, that it ultimately is about running for those positions and serving, our folks. And frankly, when Indian country is doing well, the rest of the country is doing well too.
And that's the perfect segue, because I definitely want to emphasize the fact that you are not resting on your laurels. It would be easy for somebody like you, Peggy, who's had a school board run successfully, serving in the Minnesota House of Representatives successfully, serving as the lieutenant governor of a state like Minnesota alongside Tim Walz as governor. I mean, you've really, every time you've stepped up and hit it out of the park, but you've said, I want to go and serve in our United States Senate. And putting aside the beauty of the visibility of somebody like you as a Native American woman being there, is it complementary to the idea that we talked about a few minutes ago, this idea of still leaning into state and local politics while you're pursuing a national position?
Well, I think so many of these things are related to each other. I think people just want to know that you're going to fight for them. And if that happens right at the local level, at school board, if that happens right in the United States Senate, I think folks are looking for a fighter. And here's the deal. Again, like I'm a change candidate. I am someone who cares tremendously about grassroots organizing and making sure that people who are directly impacted by decisions have a voice in creating their own future. And I think that we need people who understand what it's like to struggle to keep food on the table or pay your bills, right? Or keep the phone on, that we're able to serve in Washington because there aren't enough people who understand what it's like to struggle to afford your life. But I also think, in this moment, Democrats, our job is certainly to push back against Donald Trump and all of the things, right, that he's doing in this moment to attack our rights, to frankly just hurt people,
Yes.
right? But I also think we have to be really clear about what it is that we are for. People want more. And so, Congress negotiating the price of, lowering 10 prescription drugs for folks on Medicare, that's great. But my question is, why not all of them, right? It should be, frankly, the floor that Medicare covers dental and vision and hearing. And pre-clearance, some dude sitting behind a desk, deciding whether or not you get life-saving treatment that your doctor has prescribed to you or a procedure that your doctor has ordered, deciding whether or not you live or die. Like, we got to get rid of pre-clearance, and that's something that people should expect from us. The ability to afford and purchase a home, we should expand that. We should invest in that. Affordable childcare should be actually affordable, right? The biggest raise I ever received was when my daughter started kindergarten. We didn't have to pay for all-day childcare anymore. Like, these are the things that people want to hear from us, because right now, all they see is that the economy is rigged, and this, big bad bill is going to make it even worse for folks, and all in exchange for tax breaks for extremist billionaires. And we have to be super clear about what that's about. Now, listen, we don't have to agree on everything, but we absolutely can agree, Democrats, Republicans, independents, folks with no party affiliation whatsoever, right? It is literally all of us against extremist billionaires. And we have to be crystal clear about that right now and into the future. Because what we're building isn't just for 26, right? Like, I want to win this campaign. I'm going to win this campaign. But we're also building infrastructure for what we need to do in 2028 and 2030 and 2032 and into the future. And I think we're never going to get what we don't fight for. And this is the moment for us to fight.
So how can people help you? What can they do?
Well, I appreciate that question. If folks want to join us, they can go to peggyflanagan.com, make a donation, learn more about our campaign, sign up to volunteer if you're here in Minnesota, if you want to take a little trip. But I'm super excited about this race and just want to invite people to be a part of it. We're doing something pretty special here. And I hope that what it is able to give folks is some hope in a moment where things feel uncertain and overwhelming. We're building something for the future and just would love people to be part of it.
Well, I will say this. The one thing that you have consistently done is you have not only shown people that it's okay to get what they need, but you're also showing people, Peggy, that they can get what they deserve and more. And I think that is truly what you deliver. You've always been very keen about that for the people of Minnesota. And I think that it's incredibly exciting to think that you will be a part of having a seat at a table where it impacts not just people in your state, but even here, me in Florida, for example. You're going to be a part of the decision-making process. And I love that you're going to be taking all of your journey with you. Because to your point, each vote counts and has the same amount of value no matter who you are. And the idea that it goes towards having somebody who has even a small portion of your journey being one that's shared with me or similar in values that way, I think is pretty darn cool. So thank you, Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan from the great state of Minnesota, U.S. Senate candidate. Peggy Flanagan, thanks for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Katie. Appreciate you.
Katie Fang here. The truth matters now more than ever. So hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing. Thanks for watching.